Alright, so I'm going to try this again. I'm going to try sitting still. I've got my iPad. It's so hard. It's like looking in a mirror. It's like talking into a mirror. So I'm going to try. Anyway, I got my iPad set up on my computer. And let's see, that's my grandma's painting is standing up behind me. And there's my Homer doll. And I'm in my new apartment. And I yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. So, but yeah, I'm trying to not make everybody dizzy this time. I don't look like Grimly with my hair sticking up, so hopefully this will go okay. So, I I'm on New Media Towards New Media Texts, Setting Up the Challenges of Visual Literacy by Cynthia Selfie. I do think so. I'm just going to go through the chapter. One thing I want to say is that I decided when Dr. Buchanan brought in the zines for us to look at, that really made me nostalgic for doing zines. I love doing zines, and I used to publish the Harry Lake Man-Hitting Feminist Gazette when I lived in Iowa City, and that was really fun, and it was a good outlet for getting out all my feminist angst, because being a college town, a campus town, I wasn't a student at the time. I just lived in campus, and I lived in town because it was a very progressive community, and it was the time of the first Gulf War, and so I had moved there from the Quad Cities, actually, because it was a little bit more progressive, and I really needed that environment. So anyway, it was really great. I loved making my zine and being involved in the community. And in fact, then when I was in the community, I went to a progressive dinner, and I had written a song called "The Ballad of Bob and Newt" to the tune of the Addams Family. Let's see. They're creepy and they're frightening, mysterious and right wing. We hope they're struck by lightning. Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole. So that was part of the song. And I went to this dinner, and they said, "Hey, we're doing it. We're going to read this tomorrow at the rally in Des Moines." And they were passing on a song, and it was my song from my zine. And so that was really cool. And I said, "Hey, I don't mind if you use this, but it'd be nice to be credited for it," because they had retyped it and everything. So anyway, so on the heels of that, that made me really nostalgic. And I also used to teach a culture jamming section of the drama and the media class I used to TA for University of Minnesota. And I talked about zines, and I talked about all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm going to have my students do a zine section next time. So this Tuesday actually, my students are going to be presenting on what is a zine and what goes into a zine, and I'm going to bring in a bunch of zines for them. And I was thinking that I would, rather than use the rubric that we created for zines, that I would have them hand out their copies of zines to their classmates the day before they're going to present on them, and have their classmates read through their zines, and then include some notes about what their goals were in creating the zine. And this actually plays right into Cynthia Selfie, I feel like, with all of her visual media exercises. There's kind of a self-reflection of what they were trying to do with their project, and then there's the student reflection on what they were trying to do. And so I think that's really good, and it's just very timely because I was already thinking of doing that. So like with the visual essay, I think it is. There's a place where there's a reflection sheet on what they did and what they tried to do, and then there's the reflection sheet of the reader or viewer. So yeah, that's exactly what I had already intended when I read this chapter. I also really like that she includes sample kind of rubrics. I talked last time about rubrics because my class was making the rubric. And so I like that she includes the rubric or some sample rubrics, some sample ways of grading, because I do think that that is one thing that might hold people back from trying these experiments is how do I grade them? You know, do I just grade them on they did it or they didn't do it, or you know, what do I do? It's funny because her scale has really pretty much just three points, you know, and I usually use a 5-point rubric. At Brown Mackey, the teacher that I inherited the classes from and who's designed the rubrics, he has like a 9-point scale, and it's really complicated. And at the same time, I don't have a lot of time to recreate my own rubrics, so I have been using his. But I like 5-point rubrics, or even rubrics that just have, you know, like maybe out of 5 points or out of 8 points or whatever, and then you just, you know, you have some wiggle room there to give students a number. So yeah. But I like the fact that she has 3-point rubrics, and I guess that would never have occurred to me. I guess because I'm used to breaking rubrics down into A, B, C, and D, and F. Although, you know, when I have them by numbers, I tell my students the numbers don't necessarily translate to an A or a B or a C. I don't think of, if I use a rubric with numbers, I don't usually think of it along the lines of, well, this part is a B, this part is a C. It's just the number that it falls on. So, and students really like rubrics. So, and I suppose I think when I'm grading, it's fair to them as well. So having some guidelines for how these might be graded, these exercises might be graded in visual literacy, I think is a good thing, to encourage people to try them. I also think it's very hard to get students to think, a lot of students to think visually. My students at Brown Mackey seem to not want to think visually. I give them my spontaneous research exercise, and I tell them they have to bring in a picture as well as text, and they never seem to incorporate the picture into their final paper. So that's very interesting to me that they don't like to do that. I have a Pearson book that I use for my Comp 2 class at Scott, and it actually has a chapter on visual arguments, and it's really good, actually. I hate to give any props to Pearson at all for textbooks, but I have to be careful with that because I'm working on a test scoring assignment for them right now, too. And I have very mixed feelings about test scoring, and I feel like I'm giving a lot of grades, a lot of scores to students either that, you know, don't do exactly what they're supposed to, so I'm giving really good students low scores, and sometimes I'm giving not so good students high scores because they can't write, they can't really be understood, they can't write to be understood, and yet they hit all the points that they need to. So this points out to me what's wrong with testing, and it always does. It's a very hard road to walk. Anyway, I digress. This Pearson book has a really good chapter on visual arguments, and it includes photos, it includes political cartoons, it includes, you know, I tell my students they can include graphics, you know, like charts and graphs and diagrams and things like that. My tech writing students absolutely have to do graphics, do visual things. My other students don't. But I remember when I TA'd drama in the media, it was shortly after Hurricane Katrina, and so we showed, for example, some pictures of, you know, African American people taking groceries and things they needed from stores, and they were, you know, the photo caption said they were looting, and white people who needed things from stores were going in, basically, you know, they I can't remember what they called it, but it was not looting. It was, you know, like the implication was they needed this, and so they were just taking what they needed. But so we talked to the students about that, and the need to decode images that they were seeing, and to really think about what images they were seeing. So, so in some ways I have some experience with doing this, with visual argumentation, and you know, with again, with culture jamming, with taking ads and making it your own. And I've done culture jamming with my students for a long time. So yeah, I guess that's it. I guess that's all I have to say for now. And I think that's probably enough. I'm probably at about 10 minutes, so I have to upload this to YouTube again. Glad I figured that out finally. Anyway, that's all. I will see you all later. Bye.